She said, oh yeah, I've been there when I was a little girl. And there is this poem or song about the Brahmaputra. And I said, please tell us. And so she chanted this out, and I tried to memorize it because I couldn't write it in the car because of car sickness. So it goes, I think this is particularly interesting for the Assamese here. Kichu Tsangchu, Bargi, Kongshu Namu, Meki, Chumo Loti, Jagar Hai Gumju, Gumbachala Namne, Nyome Chu Lejo, Nyomo Chumo Lene, Hala Yunchak Pisho. And this is my rough translation. The Tsangpo River of the highlands, the Kongpo River of the midlands, the Luti River of the lowlands, Luti in reference to Brahmaputra here, the Luti River of the lowlands. O India, you the heir to gods, hold the vase in your hands and fetch the immaculate water. Fetch the immaculate water and make an offering to the gods. Now, this is an oral composition that somebody like Vince's mother carries on, and we were not even aware of it until this morning. So this is one big sort of section of the Bhutanese literature. The second is the written form, and we probably had about 20% of the population who were literate before 1950s when school education came in effectively. Now the literacy rate has increased to about 71%. But when we look at traditional written works, they're heavily influenced by India and India's Buddhist heritage. So you have the religious classics, the treatises on philosophy and on religious practice and meditation, all of them based on Indian Buddhist literary genres. Then you have also work on other sciences like grammar or linguistics or poetry, heavily influenced again by Sanskritic grammar and linguistics. In fact, poetry done by traditional Bhutanese were mostly based on the rules that Dundee, the South Indian poet, have adopted or have formulated long before Buddhism came to Tibet and Bhutan. So there's a great deal of written heritage based on the Indian literary culture. If you look at the religious literature, maybe the religious rituals and the meditation manuals would be much more localized, and one could say that there are local sort of literary genres. A lot of the rituals, certainly, the liturgies are quite different from the Indian literary sources. On this point, the earlier session was on biography, and there was a great talk about how and what biographies stand for and so forth. But in the Himalayan world, thanks to the influence from the Indian Buddhist world, biographies have a very different role. Biographies are often called namthars. Namthar literally means liberation. You're supposed to get liberated by reading a Buddhist hagiography or a holy biography. The story is supposed to inspire you and liberate you. So that was one genre that was very, very strong in both Tibet and Bhutan. In fact, when we look at the historical resources, namthars are the main resources, and both Tibet and Bhutan did so well that when you compare to pre-British India, the Himalayan countries were far more prolific and rich in terms of the biographical and historical literature. I'll not go on further, I'll stop here, but there is a great deal of change happening in Bhutan with regard to its literary culture. I'll come back to that later on.
Thank you, Dr. Karma. That's a lot of information, a lot to chew. Thank you so much for that. Now, during the past 10, 15 years, in the recent times, contemporary literature has also been picking up in Bhutan, especially those written in English. During the last 5-6 years, we have seen a surge in contemporary literature. I remember that in 2002, when I first published my book, the first one, which was a collection of short stories. There were just about less than 10 Bhutanese writing in English. today numbers have increased to at least about 50, I guess. So Dr. Chadawong here is a prolific contemporary writer. Therefore, I would like to request her to throw some light on contemporary Bhutanese literature.
Well, I'm trying to take in the information that I'm getting, because most of the things that Dr. Karmafinso said just now, it's new for me. I must own up this. And when I was being introduced by Dr. Rinzan here and by the madam down there, they said that I'm a teacher turned writer. Well, I must say, I used to be a teacher, and there are these times when people ask me, what do you do now? I stand mute for a while, because I don't know what to say. The tendency is, I want to say that I am a housewife. But again, the housewife tagline, I don't like it at all. So I tell them, whoever asks me what do, I tell them that I'm 99.9% mother and 0.1% a writer. So it's times like this when I get to play the role that Dr. Rinzan conferred upon me just now, saying that I'm one of the prolific contemporary writers in Bhutan. But when did my journey as a contemporary writer, or whatever kind of a writer I am, start? And then as the two of them were talking, I was trying to go back down the memory lane and then start from where my affair with the book started. And I realized that it started from this place, very place where we are just now. I must tell you that I grew up in the town called Samrukjonkar, which is 180 kilometers away from Guwahati. And the uncle and auntie who raised me, because my parents got divorced, I was taken in by my uncle and auntie. They had the only bookstore in town in Samrukjonkar. And I'm proud to say that it still is the only bookstore in town. And the books that they used to sell in their bookstore used to come from Guwahati. So this is where my affair with books started. And every weekend we used to come to Guwahati because we had to do shopping, buy the books, take it to Samrukjonkar. And the first foreign land that I had stepped on was Guwahati. The first ice cream I ate was in Guwahati. So Guwahati holds a lot of special moments when I took a walk back down this memory lane, as the two gentlemen here were talking. Now coming back to writing, why suddenly, out of nowhere, like Dr. Rinzan mentioned, and Dr. Karmafinso said that Bhutan was an oral society. And I grew up listening to stories narrated every evening. We would sit outside, and then our grandparents, our neighbors, we would come together on a cold day like this, especially in winters, because schools would be off then, and we had nothing else to do. We didn't have television back then. We didn't have mobile phones and other smart devices in our hands. So most of the time we would sit together with elders and our neighbors, and then we would share these wonderful stories. So this is what I grew up with. And then as I was taken in by my uncle and auntie, then I had that richness, the wealth of books surrounding me, and that's how I fell in love with written words as well. Then life happened, and I became a teacher. And it was back in 2012, when I was teaching grade 6, I realized, because I grew up with a lot of this oral literature being passed down, lots of these folk tales, I think I was a very complacent adult. I felt that because I know a lot of Bhutanese folk tales, I felt that all Bhutanese children would know it. So I happened to ask my group of students who can narrate folk tales. So we were doing folk tales on that day. But sadly, none of the children, the 30 plus students I had in my class, none of them could remember a Bhutanese folk tale. And the next impulsive thing that I could do at that moment was I asked them, how many of you know Snow White? 100%. How many of you know Frozen? And then I had to, look back into the little girl that I was when I was growing up, and what had gone wrong. Because it was not just about me. I was actually thinking about what had gone wrong, where had we lost that rich bounty of orally passed down stories that we claimed as ours. And if somebody does not take note of that, what will happen 20 years down the lane? And then I realized that the writing culture had happened. Writing as an industry is still not there in Bhutan, I must confess this. Writing culture had started and most of the folk tales were written. But when I took a peek into all this, I saw that it was all written with tourists in mind, with adults in mind. Children were left out. Children's literature as a genre in the Western world started sometime in the 13th century. And we were in the 21st century and still Bhutan did not have anything worth showing as children's literature. So it was in 2012 then I decided that I want to write illustrated folk tales for children. So that's how my writing journey began. And in 2014, there was this another major boom that happened in the children's literature as a genre. Save the Children office, in collaboration with Ministry of Education, they came up with this BCBI project, which meant Bhutan Children's Book Initiative. So they realized, like I had the realization 2 years earlier, our country as a whole realized that we did not have enough material for our children. So then they started this BCBI project. Under this banner, Dr. Rinzen and I, we wrote many new titles. We contributed many new titles. And today, we are proud to say that children's literature as a genre is growing now. So we see this shift now from orally transmitting our stories to writing down